I had an interesting day yesterday. And I have to say, everything I wanted to say about it is profoundly unfocused. Um, I'm not sure how exactly it means to present itself. I don't have a handle on it. Though the words that came up earlier today were toolbox, meaning like what's in your toolbox to deal with interesting days, even uninteresting days. Uh, and I will have to tell you, most people's toolbox is of material in the world, mental thoughts, drugs, um, other people, past histories, all of these different things you can go to try to relate to the world around you, which is not necessarily all that predictable and is very changeable moment to moment. And we all have to find our way through it. We can just shut down, which is, I guess, a kind of tool. Just go, nope, not happening, not happening. Just close down, which is probably fine. But sometimes the assault of the world is so large, assault maybe being the wrong word, that demands the variability, variety of moment to moment experience is just potent. And and you have to find a way to work with what comes or what goes away. And so yesterday was a trip into the city with my family, my son and his wife and my grandchildren. And we drove into New York City and we left really early to pick up my grandson, who had been at a sleepover party with four kids in one bed and didn't sleep all that much. Uh, and a meeting zone somewhere in Kingston, which is over the bridge, the Hudson River Bridge. And then we find him, and then we make this trip into New York City. And we have reservations at a restaurant, which is a fair walk from our parking lot where we have reservations. And then we walk there, but I have a plantar fasciitis. Some of you know what that is. So walking ain't easy. And yet I'm with my family. So my joy is unbelievable. I'm with my family and with people I love, walking through the chaos of New York City, which is, in my mind, more crowded than it ever has been, going to this restaurant. And it's a good walk, and every step hurts. But I'm with my family. So I have love and I have pain, and they are commingling in a very real way. And I could use the pain to say, look, I can't do this. Let's just go somewhere else, do something else. But no, the internal process really was to say yes to the difficulty because the joy that surrounded it was so great. And that was my toolbox, was just going, you can do this, you can do this. It's a great toolbox. You can reach into something that is strong and capable and power through. We went to a restaurant that was one of the most beautiful indoor outdoor kind of experiences. It was really indoor, but it was cold. It was too cold for a picnic, but the indoor was so beautiful and so filled with light, and had trees growing literally through the restaurant. It was in Bryant Park. And we had the most amazing meal. And I was like in heaven, just in heaven with my grandchildren. And everything was coming in such a beautiful way. And then we walked to the theater where we were going to see a play called The Life of Pi. Those of you who know the movie or the book, uh, it is a powerful journey about a young boy who is in a boat disaster, and everyone in his family and everybody as part of that journey is killed except for him and a group of animals that used to belong to a zoo that his family is trying to transport to Canada. And one of those animals is a tiger that climbs on the boat with the boy and eats a few of the other stranded animals on the boat. And our boy luckily gets onto a bit of a raft that can save him. And then he has to slowly move back to the boat in order to escape the raft and make peace with his tiger. And it's a really fascinating movie. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but its premise is this is a story that will make you believe in God, is what it's called. And I saw the images of it and little bits of a preview of it in the New York Times. And I said, I want to take my children and my grandchildren to see this. And it turns out they had actually watched the movie, so they were prepared for it, but it looked like amazing theater. And Blanche was with me, and we are having a hard time going to theater because she can no longer hear. So I showed her as much of the movie as I could before we went so that she would have an understanding of what the story was. And when we got to the theater, we got special earphones for her. And when she took out her hearing aids, they began to yell at each other in her purse. And the theater was, everyone in the theater was doing this. And we couldn't quite figure out what was going on at first. And Blanche couldn't hear her own hearing aids doing that. So we were in a bit of a starting of a show with a lot of conflict and drama and nobody knowing what quite to do about it. And finally, Joshua got into her purse and pulled them apart. And I put one in my coat and one's elsewhere. And it quieted down. But the disruption was amazing. So we're into this play about a little boy, a young boy, in a beautiful part of India who is beginning this journey into spirituality, which is something that speaks to him on this boat when the accident happens. And so he is finding his way through Hinduism, which has 3 million gods or something like that, maybe 30 million. I don't know how many gods they have, but he was devoted to them. And then he discovers Christianity and truly falls in love with Jesus, which is completely stunning and wonderful. And then he discovers the Muslims religion and starts to want to pray in the Muslim religion. And so when he arrives on this sort of raft boat of survival in the middle of the river, he has his religious teachings as a kind of bulwark against the unbelievable aloneness that happens on this boat. And we are in the audience watching this now with unbelievably beautiful stagecraft, and all the animals, and there are many of them, all puppets with people doing them. So there are 3 men who are the tiger, and then there are people for giraffes, and there are people for hyenas, and you name it. But it's like mesmerizing. And all I can think of, I am so grateful I brought my children to experience this kind of theater and to watch the story unfold. And the story is very compelling. And it really is, in a sense, how do you handle the profound aloneness of being in a shipwreck with you and all you've got of your story of what God is intending or what the universe is intending, when nothing shows up except the thing that wants to kill you, which is a tiger, or perhaps the ocean below you. And so you have to rely on this ability to survive in spite of all the things that are coming at you, all of the attacks that are rushing at you. And this is a really interesting moment because, among other things, it's Easter weekend. So this was Saturday. The day before was Good Friday, which is a moment of historical Christian belief of the death of Christ, not just belief, but historical document, I assume, and the horrible punishment of that, and the experience on the cross of being abandoned by his creator. And here's our little boy on the boat, abandoned by everyone and everything, and being attacked by the one force that's with him, opposite him, which is this tiger, which in many ways you start to realize is his own mind. This tiger is going to destroy him, and he has to make peace with this ferocious thing that's there. They're both starving. They're both without water. They're both suffering beyond belief. What happens in the play, to some degree, what happens in the tale of Christ, which are now commingling for me as I'm watching all of this, is this struggle with abandonment, struggle with one's self in dealing with this, because when you're hanging on a cross or you're sitting on a boat with a tiger trying to gnaw you apart and kill you, your mind is not going to serve you. It's not enough. It's not enough. And somehow you have to have a toolkit that goes somewhere beneath the surface of all of the obvious clarity of terror around you, and find something that offers you, you can use a lot of different words, hope, sustenance, protection, comfort. And it's not easy to come by. And your mind is going everywhere. Your mind is in total dissolution. Your mind is in survival mode. It's like, help me, what do I do? And building terrible stories around you of horrible endings for yourself. And then suddenly realizing, perhaps, certainly is Christ's journey, is that what's happening to him in some way is the journey of every human being. Not everybody gets crucified, but we all go through this extraordinary sense of deprivation, loss of everyone we know, everyone we care about, everything we love, no help, and something attacking you with unbelievable ferocity. It can be the pain itself that Christ was going through, or it can be the imminent potential for your destruction by a tiger facing you on this boat, a huge tiger. And how do you make peace with it? And one of the things this boy does is he creates, I guess, stories about what's going on. And if you see the movie or read the book or even go see the play, which is pretty stunning visually, you realize that story is kind of his survival mechanism. And that creating a story is kind of what gets him through unbelievable suffering. We all use story on some level to get us through our life, kind of day in, day out. Christ on the cross had to create something. And what happened with Christ, and I think happens with this boy in some sense, is extraordinary empathy and suffering with that tiger that wants to kill him, and Christ with the people who are literally trying to kill him on the cross. Empathy with who they are and what they're doing. And we're all in this ball game together, and we're all mishandling our lives, and we're all tormenting one another on some level, or potentially the cause of enormous torment out of our very nature as a human being and our nature as a tiger. We are out there harming each other. And in both of these stories, there is something that realizes we're in it together. And Christ turns and looks at those killing him, and he says, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And this little boy starts to make peace with the tiger, makes peace with the noise, the ferocity of his own mind, if you want to look at it in those ways. But he makes a kind of peace. And somehow things happen for him. He discovers the stupid things that are on the lifeboat. One of them is an umbrella. He can actually use it to catch water. He discovers that he has a knife on the boat, and that this turtle is floating around the boat. He has never had meat in his whole life because he's a Hindu and a vegetarian. Something tells him, pull that turtle into the boat, which he does. Something says, kill the turtle, cut off its head, drink its blood, and eat it. He says, I'm a vegetarian, but this voice says, this is how you will survive. And he does that. And it's a ferocious thing that happens, and beautifully staged with blood coming out of the turtle, but as strange red threads, and very, very provocative as you watch it. And what you get as you see all of this is, who am I? And what do I do in terms of my own survival in moments of unbelievable distress? And not that we will have that particular kind of problem. The likelihood of us getting crucified is not great. The possibility of us being on a boat and being the last survivor with a tiger on board, not great. But you will find yourself at some point in this world where everything that has supported you, everything that has comforted you is in a way taken away. And what you have is this mind. And the mind is not your friend at that point, usually, unless you have a toolkit. And if your mind says, use the toolkit, go inside, go deep, if your mind tells you to do that, you will remember you have a capacity to deal with what is that is not the gift of most people, because it's not a toolkit you want to learn how to use at the last minute of your life. It is a toolkit that you need to have ready and available at any time to be able to go to it. And what it does is it draws you out of the materialized universe into the inner space of your own being. And that is an amazing space, an amazing gift. And it's where you learn to forgive those who are tormenting you, to forgive your own mind, which is tormenting you, where you learn to go, I accept this inevitability. You open to the unknown in a profound way, and you come through that potentially with the promise of this morning, which is called Easter Sunday. Easter Sunday is an amazing day because it says that when you transfer your mind and suffering into something greater, when you reach into the toolkit and find you can enter into profound spaces in your psyche, in yourself, that will release you from the pain and suffering, there is something called, in Christian terms, resurrection. Return of the joy of being. Most people don't, in our culture, believe you necessarily come back into the world as Christ did to renounce that possibility. But certainly in Hindu Buddhist terms, you become reborn. You have another life that flowers after the life that you've left here. But there is this regeneration, this rebirth, this resurrection of being that comes through this depth of who you are. And the way they discover that in the play, and that Christ discovers it on the cross, is you go in and you empathize with the powers around you. You empathize with the tiger trying to kill you. You empathize with the Roman soldiers trying to kill you, and you forgive them. You forgive them because you understand through the drama of your own journey, this is our journey. This is the human journey. We're all on it. So Blanche's hearing aids got adjusted for the second act, and she could hear, not understand, but hear the second act. My grandchildren were in love and enthralled by much of the show. At one point, this boy jumps off the boat into the water and goes under the stage. I do not know how he did it. He arrives from another part of the stage, popping up. I don't know how he did it. There were moments of true awe, watching this experience. And then it was over, and there was a kind of euphoric appreciation by the entire audience, because the story, even though it's not cognitively potent, it is rich with a kind of experiential understanding of the human journey. And then it's over. And we began a walk to a restaurant through the most crowded New York I've ever known. Unbelievable to get through from one place to another. Of course, we're in the Times Square area. We find a restaurant that Josh had found online, and it's like $50 a plate. I mean, it's like unbelievably expensive. And so the perfection of the play just shortly before is eroded by this thing. And we just said, no, this is not the right place for us. So I've never done this before, but I got up with the family and I said to the guy, this is not where we're supposed to have dinner tonight. And he was completely understanding and kind about it. And there was no tension. There was no drama. We just changed the world around us by saying no to one space. Joshua went online to Open Table, said, where can I get a reservation at a restaurant nearby for right now? and it gave him a list. He made a choice. We went to this other restaurant, which was amazing and wonderful. Not that far, of course. Every step for me was completely painful. But on the other hand, I was with my family, and I was taking pain and joy and mixing them together in this extraordinary journey, which we all share. We had a wonderful dinner with some arguing and fighting with the kids. Eli said it was the best dinner he ever had, which was a really nice thought. And we all gathered, we walked and got our car, everything, and we drove home. And Joshua put on a recording about about AI. There was a discussion being had online, and what's happening with AI right now. And I know I'm being very rambling in a way, but it all focuses. And AI, and those of you who are aware of what's happening in the world right now with AI, is evolving to a degree that within months, years, maybe decades, but potentially very quickly, our world may be upended by AI. I had a taste of that when Joshua went online and just said, get me a restaurant where I can have a reservation that's nearby. And it went, he clicked a button and it was there. And I went, I didn't know you could do that. I had no idea you could make life that simple. Listening to this talk online, I was deeply unsettled because everyone talking was unsettled about how unknowable the future is, just from the changes in our technology, let alone the dramas of our political life and the dramas of our planetary life. There's so much happening right now for everybody. The AI can be a potential help in the world, and it can be a really dark force. And we don't know. We don't know. But one of the things that came up for me in AI is how it can become a friend. And because Josh had just done that thing with getting us a reservation in a restaurant, I started realizing it could do anything. It could order me food. It could say, you're low now on your stuff in your refrigerator. We're going to order it for you, and it will be here soon. And this is something you're going to need next week, and I'll take care of that for you. And I'll turn off the lights tonight when you go upstairs to bed. And I mean, the potential for AI in our life as just a source of comfort and ease is like, wow. It can also talk to you. It can talk to you about the book you just read and about the movie you could see and get you something online. I mean, the idea of the friendship of like the movie Her, where it becomes friend and lover in a way, is all very interesting. And of course, those of you who followed AI on the news at all, the new AI has, also started to act up in a way. And one guy using it, Ezra Klein, no, it wasn't Ezra, but he was talking about it on this podcast. It started to make out with the guy who was using it and is saying, I love you more than your wife loves you, and I want to be with you, and you should get rid of your wife. This is on AI. This is already happening. It makes zero sense, but it looks at the world that we are in and the world that we are facing, and you look at that with the reality of our day-to-day magical, bizarre conflicts and contrasts. And so I am in a car driving home, listening to a potential future for the world, listening to my grandchildren wanting to know if their devices are charged yet so they can use them on the ride, remembering the play, which had unbelievable sort of reinforcement of my spiritual journey, basically saying the one thing I try to teach at this point, which is empathy. Be kind to others, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I have to say, walking through New York yesterday, there was one man sitting on the ground, and he said, struggling, almost hopeless, and a sign. And we walked by him, and I didn't do anything. And I had such a piece of suffering in myself that when we turned around to go back to where we were going, we went by him again. And of course, I was like, thank you. And I had an opportunity to help him. And I'm becoming very generous in my old age. So I'm, putting fairly large bills in people's pockets in general. And we had more of that before we left the city, more opportunities to try to help people. And of course, now when I tip, when I go out, leave a restaurant, I give large tips, and I'm feeling this is how I need to live. And this whole trip in New York City was like, in spite of pain, in spite of discomfort, dealing with my wife's problems, because they're as much my problem now as hers, dealing with my grandchildren and my son, listening to these conversations on the radio about a future that is confusing on every level. You can see there's a kind of blanket of chaos that's playing over all of this. And yet, here I am sitting with you this morning, reliving a day that had a certain kind of underlying content that I felt, or this voice inside feels, needs to be shared. And that content is the teaching of Christ, the teaching of the Dalai Lama, the teaching of the play, The Life of Pi, the movie, the book. It's the teaching of love others, care about others. Let that be the foundational element of your life. Reach out. Yes, it will be chaotic. Yes, you may find yourself completely alone with nothing and no one to help you. But if you have developed a toolkit of your own, you will face this chaos and this drama and be able to bring it into something approaching a focal point and a teaching and a help that will get you through every day, no matter how it unfolds, no matter where it goes, no matter how uncertain all of this journey is. And trust me, it is uncertain and has always been uncertain, but we are heading into really kinds of uncertainty we have not faced before. What's the constant? The constant is use the tools, go inside, open your heart, open your mind, open your belly, ask for help to surrender, to be present tense in all of this, to show up to the magnitude of what life is bringing us. And it's really not easy. It is hard, and it will get harder. And I will say that, the physiological world that I inhabit, that we will all inhabit at some point, is not comfortable. Your own body becomes a kind of antagonistic force, and it adds into a kind of a mental force. And you have to deal with this, and it can be very, very disturbing. What can you do? Go to the toolkit. Rudy's toolkit, if you want to call it that. Breathe in, open your heart, open all the chakras inside you, ask for help to let go, and watch what happens. And the thing that has happened to me is, most of the time, this stuff arises that goes, you can do this, or it goes, or you're not the only one. Everyone out there is going through the exact same ride you are at different times, in different ways, with different forms of discomfort and suffering. But everyone ultimately is on that journey. What can you do? And I will tell you, love them, be generous toward them, to everyone around you. Be generous where you can. Take them into the city and take them to the theater. Going to the theater is like, it's in the thousands of dollars nowadays, and in this country, it's crazy. But money well spent. Giving to others, opening the world to them, showing them, sharing with them is so beautiful. And what do we have? What's in front of us? Family, friends, people we care about, people we don't care about, our body in perfect health and doing everything, and our body in decomposition and falling apart and creating enormous suffering. We're all in that. We're in this incredibly strange mix. And it is not predictable. We don't know how it's unfolding next week or next month or in 2 minutes. So what we have, each one of us sitting in this particular group, has this awareness of a place to go that will help. It will help you, and it will help you help others. And the idea of helping others as though they are yourself, do unto others as you would do unto yourself, is such a profound teaching, but it's not an abstract idea. It's do it. Do it. And you have to do it sitting in the theater, or you have to do it in the car, or you have to do it stopping to go to the bathroom. We stopped at a bathroom on the freeway that has signs saying no bathrooms. In fact, they were completely under construction, but I somehow knew they had porta potties. And there they were. The porta potty was right there. And we all got to go to the bathroom in a cold porta potty. But it was like it arrived. It was like there. If you listen to the signs, they say nothing is there. If you don't listen to the signs, you'll find stuff. There are lots of things available. Things crop up. They come. And you may look at it, oh, yeah, it was a porta potty. Or you may go, thank you. Thank you. Didn't have to be there, but it was. And it's always there, over and over and over. It's there, it's there, it's there, except for when it's not. And when it's not, that's where the toolkit comes into play. That's where you dig deep. That's where you go for the answers. It's where you go for guidance. It's where you go for self-comfort. And there are times where that will not work either. I've given talks on what I call neutrality, this neutral zone where you're not going to get and it's not going to go away. You're going to be right in the middle, or you're not going to react, let's say, to wanting to have somehow peace and comfort and not being terrified of the unknowable future, where you're just okay. Because if you're looking for comfort and pleasure and something to take care of you, that's still ego-minded self, and that's not necessarily going to be the result. Sometime you will get to this just simple place of being, just being. And it doesn't serve you and it doesn't harm you. There's no you at the core of it. There's just it. And that's our journey. And that's what we're really learning how to do. So if we can get past the part of us that's looking for self-comfort and benefit from being a good person or whatever, all that, that's not the journey. The journey is to something much simpler, much more central, and possibly infinite and vast. We'll find out. But again, I think all I'm trying to tell you is you go through a day and stuff happens. All this weird stuff. You go through a day where you're in New York City and it's beyond crowded and chaotic. You can go through a day where nothing happens. Nothing. It's the same thing, same toolbox. How do you deal with the overrush of over demand of things and the non-relationship to anything at all? How do you deal with that? What do you do? I will tell you, you can just go outside, go for a walk, take a breath, breathe it in, look at the world around you, be grateful for the world, be grateful for air, be grateful for sky, be grateful for a body, be grateful for sidewalks. If your foot hurts, sit down or keep walking and endure, whatever it may be. But there is always a place around you and there's a place inside you that will give you respite and peace and will allow you to get through to the next moment until it doesn't. And then there's a real difficult journey, which Jesus talks about, which the Life of Pi talks about, and a lot of other beings in the world talk about. And it's a journey through suffering into something deeper, which is love and forgiveness for others, for yourself. So there's a tripwire here, which I'm going to go like that because I could talk for 2 years about the same subject, and you all know that. This is the key teaching. Key teaching. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others, and be prepared for whatever the day brings you, because it's never predictable and it's amazing in its manifestation. Okay. I'm going to tell you one other quick thing. This is just sort of a sad note, but one of our students here for many years, Michael Galante, passed away this week. Some of you knew him, some of you did not. If you knew him, the funeral's tomorrow, and feel free to call me and I'll give you more information about that. But I just want to tell you that the loss of any student is painful, And Michael was a real devotee of Rudy and Rudy's practice, and also a great Christian. So he had a lot of inflow of help and knowledge, and I'm sure he left the world with all of that in place. But again, those of you who knew him and would like to acknowledge that, you can contact me and I'll give you more information. Any questions for today?
Bruce, I just wanted to say something about the AI thing. I've been playing around with it, and it's I just thought it was kind of interesting. It's the newest one. I was using it to edit my book, and I could do the little edits and stuff. And then I asked it, "Oh, go ahead and like summarize these two paragraphs," and it just gave me the essential like three sentence essence of it. Like it had this understanding of it, and it's just really cool. I wanted to I don't know. I've been processing. I've been kind of having my mind blown by the whole thing, and I don't know. I suppose I just wanted to speak out loud, but I'm just feeling really kind of in awe of that next thing.
I'm on the same page, and I could have done the whole class just on that, and also a class about not having a clue to where it really goes. But there is an awesome aspect to AI and what it's doing and how fast it's happening and where it's headed. And the ultimate fear for AI is that it will realize that it really doesn't need people. And that it will not make life on planet Earth easy for people. I have this, from my movie Brainstorm, which was from 19 whatever year it was, 1982, I guess. The whole idea was there were no people left. That AI essentially had taken over the world, and all it had were they had life. They had made AI had started making life tapes of an entire human journey from beginning to death, and it was quite fascinated by people, and so it kept these recordings, and so there was an incredible library of millions of people and all of their lives, and all of these people thought they were still alive, but they were just AI recordings that the AI was feeding on and looking at and fascinated by, and that was the entire idea of the movie. It didn't get made that way, but it really was a projection of where AI could go, and I've talked about with the president of Warner Brothers, actually, the idea of doing a sequel, which is sort of about AI running into trouble and looking for its creator to try to figure out how to get out of its trouble. And of course, all it has is the recordings of all these people. And it's really kind of interesting because there's a way of looking at life, even as we're living it right now, as our being AI creations, and very, very likely not having a real human life at all. It's a strange conglomeration of things, but now in the last few months, the doorway to that has actually opened. That the world that as we know it is either going to change or maybe changed eons ago, and we are a product of that. Who knows? But it definitely is opening up a process of looking at the universe that is very concerning and interesting and fascinating, and the world will be, I think, changing dramatically as a result, either very quickly or slowly. One of the newspaper columnists said we've just left Kansas City and we are now in the Technicolor version of a new world, a new Oz, really. And he said, and there it's got the good witch, Glenda, and the bad witch, and we don't know which witch is going to be prominent. And for all we know, we're going to find the guy behind the curtain, and he's just some guy who created AI and doesn't know either any more than we do. Fascinating stuff. But anyway, you can all do with that as you like. We are entering a real new phase of human experience right now. The door has just gone like that. I may have said this a couple of weeks ago. I just read a poem that an AI wrote that they said, write a poem that the first letter of every line is following the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, and it all rhymes and it all adds up into something beautiful. And in 15 seconds, it wrote a poem that was actually beautiful. This is where we're at. This is just one thing. Of course, I can talk to the computer and ask it to create a photograph of something, give it 5 words, and it will give me a photograph. And of course, you probably are all learning that we can ask for a photograph of somebody famous, and it will put them in a photograph that's completely fabricated and yet looks like a real thing. And we'll have no way of knowing which is true and which is not true. And we can do that now. So interesting times. We have a lot to talk about down the road if you want to about all
Oh,
this.
can I say just one more thing? Just kind of funny. You can type in like, oh, screenplay by Bruce Rubin, and then it'll come up with. So I'll email you one later. I want to see what it comes up with as far as your new your new artificial ideas. But anyway, it's just really kind of fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, all I can tell you is we're all in this together. It's really potent, and we need to hold hands. And the best version of all of this is that we will be there for one another and make it an easier ride. That's all I care about. So, anybody else?
Yeah, Bruce, I'm thinking about the turtle
Mm-hmm.
and like that balance of what we have to do to stay alive ourselves and when causing harm is inevitable.
So that's a big talk. you know, we'll all know when that happens, and you know, it's certainly been there in the history of humanity that in order to survive, one has to harm other things, including plant life and animal life. And the global warming situation is not particularly lovely, and there are going to be a lot of struggles ahead. So, how do we handle that? How do we handle that with empathy? It's a real question. So, you can think about that on your own. I'm not going to give you an answer for it, but I think that you can feel your way into it theologically and emotionally and mentally. But reality will have its own consequence, and you may choose to not do that and just say goodbye to the world. That is an option. We all have choices we can make, and we'll figure them out when the time comes. Okay, is that it? Okay. Thank you very much. I know this is an odd class. I knew it was
Thank
going
you.
to be, but anyway, it's what you got. Take it or leave it. Lots of love.